Writing fiction changed my life, and it can change yours too. This is my story. When I was in university, I started writing the fiction that I eventually wanted to bring to the world. I would look around me, and it really felt like, at the time, that all of my friends and people out there, everybody were in relationships, and we were close to graduating too, so some people were even engaged. Very few people actually got married, not many, but it got to the point for me where I started to feel a little sad and discouraged. Everybody seems to be finding love or finding the people that they're spending their time with or intend to spend the rest of their lives with. When's it going to be my turn? And I was still very young. I was still like in my late teens, so for me to think that is really funny in retrospect. But at the time, the feeling was very real. And something that I've learned as I've grown older is that when something invades your mind, the more that you think about it, the more that it lingers and builds, and it actually does start to inhabit your mind. It starts to live in your mind, and it gets bigger and bigger, and it can become something genuinely distressful. This thought at first was just a thought, but then it kind of grew bigger to the point where I started to feel actual despair. Like I started to really wonder and get worried about when I would actually meet somebody. The clock felt like it was ticking. It's really funny to reflect on it now, but in a way I'm really happy that I sort of was a bit overly dramatic about it, because it's what led to the whole point of this video and this story. As I was writing the story that I had started, the characters in my story started to formulate. And I started to think, well, this is my story, my life, and the things that I'm experiencing and the challenges I'm experiencing. So many of the side characters were inspired by people from my life, people that I would see day to day, people I had liked and enjoyed their company and that I would have interesting conversations with. Those kinds of people made their way into my story as characters. The only missing character was the love interest. The leading woman in the story, she was a blank slate. She was a question mark. She was an unknown. This character, who's not based on anybody because there's no romantic interest in my real life to kind of project on to this character in my story, she's gonna be the one actual fictional element in my story. My story is fiction, but everything is kind of based on reality. This one person would be truly fictional because she didn't exist in reality. I took a page out of the TV show How I Met Your Mother, which the main character is telling his kids the story of how he had met their mother, his wife. A lot of episodes are based on his anxiety and his despair relating to him finding his soulmate. And it's funny because in the show he's telling the story in retrospect, right? Like he had found his soulmate, he had found the person he married. Everything worked out in the end and he's just telling the story, but the stories are that he struggled time and again looking for people, looking desperately and trying to find them. There was like 9 seasons of this stuff. 8 of the seasons were him just like, you know, living life and growing and going through pain and all of that until finally he did meet his soulmate. And this method of storytelling is really interesting because the writers of the show would have to figure out how he got to the end. I'm pretty sure that's how it was anyway. I felt like they knew that, oh, how he met their mother, like he obviously meets her at some point, but we have like 9 seasons of TV to actually fill out. So we need to actually fill it out and kind of figure out how this character does eventually find this person. What happens? How does he meet her? What does she look like? Who is she? And all of this. For me, it was actually a process of knowing that I would one day meet my soulmate, acknowledging and believing that she is out there and that I am destined to meet her and that is an inevitability. And it's just a matter of when and how. I also had to figure out who is she? What is she like? What does she look like? How does she speak? What does she say? If I met her, would I even know she's my soulmate? Would it be something that grows? How would our first conversation be? How would our second and third conversation be? How would things play out? I was so fascinated with this line of thinking that I started to write. I first imagined, what kind of person is she? Would I even know it's her? Would I even believe that it could be her? The qualities that I find beautiful in a human being, things like kindness, the way somebody addresses and talks to other people, the way she gestures and moves and does simple things like pick up an object and passes it to somebody. There was enough information in these details for me to know that this is somebody that's beautiful and that I'm drawn to. What does she represent for me? The name just came to me. She represents hope. And so I named her Hope. So I would start to write dialogue with this character. I started to dream and imagine how I would meet this character, what I would say if I met her, and what would she say to me? What kind of conversations would we have? The person that I imagine being my soulmate that I fall completely in love with, what kind of things would we talk about? What would our conversations look like? Where would we go? What topics would we discuss? What personal things would we share? How might we help each other? This is where it got really interesting. I started to write this dialogue, and my process was like this. I imagined I was speaking to this beautifully angelic example of a human being, and I would write exactly what I would say, exactly how I felt, whatever kind of arrogance or ego I may be carrying, whatever kind of sincerity and vulnerability that I might share, anything and everything that I felt was fitting and appropriate and real, I would write as my dialogue. It was kind of like writing a screenplay for a movie. I would write what my character would say, and then I would imagine and write what Hope would say. Hope would always say what I wanted to hear, what I needed to hear, and this writing process came a lot easier than I expected, because I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew what would make me feel better: compassion, love, warmth, understanding. I wanted somebody to hear me and see me and acknowledge me, somebody to grasp me and what I might have been going through, somebody who was kind and sensitive, somebody who was a little playful and cheery, a cheerleader and a supporter, somebody who was on my side and who wanted to see me be happy. And in my experience of writing this, unlocked this deep and profound lesson. I learned, first of all, how I envisioned Hope was basically a perfect person, that it would be impossible to meet somebody like that in real life. It wasn't that I was sad or upset that seems like what I want isn't out there and can never be. The lesson that I learned from it was that what I want is actually not from someone out there that's going to come into my life, be this image of perfection and show me infinite levels of love and compassion and understanding, but rather all of the things that I need, that I want, came from within me. This character, Hope, came from within me. It wasn't dialogue from someone else. This wasn't somebody else coming in and saying these things that would cheer me up and lift my spirits and put a smile on my face and make me happy and make me feel loved and make me feel important. These weren't words from someone else. This wasn't me begging for these morsels of love and compassion from others. These were words coming directly from within me to myself. This was so profound to discover this process, this essentially this power, because this recontextualized everything in my life. This pursuit of external validation, of love externally, that I would pray and hope one day, hope that somebody would come into my life and is this absolute perfection and gives me everything that they, it just gives me everything. It's obviously a false and unproductive thing to want. In the physical realm, perfection simply doesn't exist, and infinity doesn't exist. Everything is bound. Everything is limited here in the physical sense. Wanting something you can never get is like a form of self-sabotage. So being able to channel the realm of the non-physical, the realm of potential, the immaterial, where limitless and infinite and boundless exists, the realm where love exists, was incredible. I haven't met a real life Hope. I've met some people who are pretty close, but the point isn't to wait to find somebody who matches the character that I envisioned, created, and wrote. The lesson here is that this thing that I'm after is already present inside. Nobody knows and understands me better than myself. Therefore, nobody can provide for me better than myself. Nobody can love me better than myself. This process of writing, what started as fiction, ended up being the most honest story I have ever written, and it changed my life because now I have discovered this power of hope. It was always there, I just had to manifest it, and the process of that was through writing. And I encourage you all to do the same, to think of what it is that you need in your life, to imagine what that person looks like and what they would say and what they would do, and then for you to realize that you being able to imagine what they would say, being able to imagine what they would do, means you have access to that person's wisdom, to that person's charisma, to that person's compassion and love. And so because you have access to it, you are it. You are love. Do some writing. It just might change your life.